Hello, 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 hello. How are you? How are you? How are you doing? Are you doing good? I hope so. Because it's Monday. It's Monday. Monday fun day. We're back. Hope everybody had a good weekend.
Transfer complete.
Hopefully everyone's getting back into the swing of things. Everyone's like, yeah, man, had a great weekend. Got to take care of a lot of things. And now it's Monday, fun day. And yeah, just how it is. You know, when I say Monday, fun day, one of the things that comes to mind, I don't know if you guys remember this, but there used to be like a candy that like, it used to come in like a packet. It had like a white packet, and it had like a little candy stick, like a white stick, like a dipping stick. And then you had in the other little pouch, there was like the powder, the sugar. So you would like lick the stick, and then you would dip that stick into the powder, into the, the sugar. It's like Monday fun day. That's what I think about. I don't know why. I gotta see if I can find that. Candies, it's weird because, candies, they, some have longevity. Like, you can still find them on the shelf. And then some things you can't. Like, I've seen, like, Big League Chew. Like, I was surprised, like, all these years, I'm like, man, they still got Big League Chew? I don't know who chews it. I guess the kids that play baseball chew it, But I don't know. I don't know. What candies? Do you remember any candies growing up as a kid that were like good candies? I remember there was this other one. There was this liquid like gummy bear, where it was just like in a tube. And you just squeeze it out and it'd be like liquid gummy bear. I was like, man, dude. As a kid, I was fortunate. I was blessed as a kid. I was. I was able to experience like a real childhood experience. Like one of those 80s childhood experiences. And I think it wasn't just me. I think it was a lot of people. I think the 80s had a resonance that, like, when you think about the 80s, if the 80s were good for you at all, nah. Maybe for some people, they hated the 80s. But you probably had to be, you probably weren't a kid. You were probably older. You know what I mean? Like, when you think about the 80s, you're probably more adult at that point if you're hating the 80s. Probably went to high school at that time. Or you're graduating high school. But yeah, the weekend, man. Weekend's over. We got Monday. We still got the election going on. So don't think that's gonna go anywhere until we get to November, December, I guess. Thanksgiving. Gonna have to wait till Thanksgiving to find out what happens. You got all the while to wait. So you got Memorial Day, 4th of July. You got Labor Day. I don't know, do people celebrate Columbus Day anymore? It was weird. This past year down south, it was like Columbus Day came through, and it was a bit weird because it's like Southerners don't really appreciate Columbus Day. When I first moved down here, nah, they don't celebrate Columbus Day. That's not a day for them, you know. And for whatever reason, like coming from the Northeast and coming down south, it's like you see the stark contrast in acknowledgement, where it's like it's heads and tails difference, you know. And I don't know. I mean, does it have to do with there's more Italians up north? But I would think there's more Italians up north for sure. But I mean, down south, it's not like they've never heard of Columbus. You know, I mean, the capital of South Carolina is Columbia. So I don't see why they'd be so opposed to Columbus. You know? But for whatever reason, it's just, there's no celebrating. There's no real acknowledgement. And the funny thing is, this past year, it was Indigenous Peoples Day. They celebrated on the same day now. So, it's one of those things. It's like, I think when some of the Southerners started to realize that people, were celebrating Indigenous People Day, that's when they started to be like, oh, Columbus Day, it's Columbus Day. It's, Happy Columbus Day. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think a lot of people even pay attention to some of these things down here. Like, they don't find it interesting, or they don't think it's worth their time to pay attention. I don't know. But definitely this past year, there was a sense that when it came to Columbus Day, people were celebrating Indigenous People Day. And even me myself, I was like, oh, it's Indigenous People Day, and I'm like part Indigenous, I guess. If by Indigenous you mean Native, Native American or Native Indian, being my background is what it is, but nobody really cares about that, dude. No, like when they say Indigenous people, like, to me, I'm assuming they're talking about like Neolithic people that like were nomads, that were like roving, across the continent with their, mammoth hide skin on their back, and like walking with their family, with their tribes people, you know what I mean, with spears, and with the dog running around. You know what I mean? Like, that's, to me, that's what I think people assume Indigenous People Day is. You know what I mean? But I don't know. I think I was trying to call it out at one point. Like, what is Indigenous people? Like, who are the Indigenous people? Like who are we referring to? Like, what are they supposed to represent? Because I just wasn't sure how to identify them. There's been a lot of Indigenous people, so, like, which ones are you talking about? But I mean, that's all the way, in October. So that's a long ways to get to, considering, because you're not going to be able to get to Election Day without having to go through all those holidays and all those months, all those weeks. And of course, you got the kids in school right now. So if the kids are in school and the kids, all they're thinking about is getting to summer. That's what the kids think about. Unless you're in high school. And now those kids, I remember when I was younger what it was like, trying to figure out, like, what am I gonna do with my life? How am I gonna go through the next year? Do I go to college? Do I join the military? Like, what am I gonna do with my life? That's a tough spot. That's a tough spot to be in. And so, how kids are looking at it these days, I mean, considering to join the military, what would go on in their minds, as far as like, because I think what goes on in a person's mind is that you think about war. That's the first thing you think of, because if you're not in a time of peace, where you're just kind of thinking to yourself, well, it's going to be peacetime, so there's not really much going on. It's just going to be exercises and going to school, getting some training, getting some skills, whatever, and then you get out of the service. But I mean, how much of that applies today? With everything that they're talking about, that they've been talking about over the past 3 years, with the South Pacific, with Russia and Ukraine, and then everything over in China, the South Pacific, Korea, Japan, Taiwan. And if you're a young person and don't know anything about, countries or about nations, how they work, how they operate, and you don't care about politics, I would be shocked. I would be shocked. Because I would just be like, how does a school not teach you anything about politics? It doesn't teach you anything about religion. It doesn't teach you anything about nations. It doesn't teach you anything about job skills, and then say that you're getting an education. I mean, it's crazy. It's crazy. And yet, that's what happens year after year after year after year. And all these young kids, the boys in particular, they got to be thinking about whether or not they're going to be going and joining the service. Some of them, there's got to be a percentage of them that are like, oh, I'm going to go join the military. I'm going to go and sign up to join the Navy or the Army. Or, I'm going to go sign up to become a Marine. Because those are the service branches that most people think about when it comes to, trying to figure out what branch of the service to sign up for. Maybe you could say Space Force. Maybe you got kids out there that are like, yo, I want to be the Space Force. You could go join the Coast Guard. Try getting into the Coast Guard. So, a lot of this stuff, it goes on day to day, day to day. How do you navigate it? How do you figure it out? Me, I'm trying to figure out my whole thing about marriage and meeting somebody. That's I haven't gotten into these card talks having to do with relationships, because I'm still just trying to find my voice in a way that it makes sense to me. So I'm trying to build up some time with videos so that I could get used to like hearing my thought process, and then try to figure out, how is it that I see things? Like how does the world look now at this point, at this, stage of my life, at this age? And, I could talk about relationships, but it turns out, the relationship side of things is never really, it's never kosher, It's always going to be like more, haphazardness, more, navigating through a minefield than, oh, I went out on a date this weekend and I had a really good time, I'm thinking I'm going to call the girl back up. I'm going to call her back. Because let me tell you, that's nerve-wracking in itself, man. You start talking with somebody, then you start thinking about that person, then you're thinking about them constantly. You can't stop thinking about them. You're trying to go to work. And then it's all this little stuff, waiting for your first argument, waiting for, you know, the anniversary, waiting for the birthday, waiting for, it's a lot of stuff that in the end it's just like you lose yourself. My car talk won't be a car talk anymore. I start seeing somebody, that's it, man. I'm gonna be like, oh boy, I got no time to do any car talk now. I gotta focus on other things. So, and the chance of being able to meet somebody that like falls in line, that's able to kind of understand where things are at and whatnot, like it's too much coin flipping. It's heads or tails, 50-50 at best. It's a 50-50 proposition at best. Otherwise it slides away from you. It's your chances of being able to connect with someone, it doesn't exist like the way it does in the movies. Especially, if you can remember the 80s and the 90s type of romance movies that they would, put for people to digest, to try to make it seem like that, oh, that's what it's supposed to be like in real life. I was listening to a channel, and it happened to be a girl's channel. She was talking about When Harry Met Sally. And that's an old movie. That's like older person's movie when I was younger, when, watching it. And I've never even seen it to this day, to be honest. I'm not at that age. And so, it just, again, relationships is a whole other ball of wax. And to start talking about relationships, because how many other channels talk about relationships? They got plenty of channels that talk about relationships, and it's all negative. So, and I'm not a matchmaker, and I'm not trying to sit here and say, hey, go to the library. That's where you meet a nice girl. Hey, go to the church. If you're trying to meet a nice girl to marry, then go to the church, and there she'll be, waiting for you right down there. I don't know if she'll be at the first pew or the last pew, or somewhere in between. She's waiting there, right there for you, this whole time. That's where she's been. It's like, come on. Like, how are you supposed to connect with people these days? It's all randomized. It's the randomizer. You got to throw yourself out there and put yourself in the randomizer and just shuffle around and bounce around from this group to that group to that group to this group to this group to that group. And then eventually, if you're lucky, you wind up, connecting with someone. And then that person is probably all like, I don't know, they got their problems. Chances are you'll have your problems and they'll have their problems, and that's why it's a match made in heaven, because you both got problems. So, alright, I'm going to leave it there. That's the talk for right now. If anything, have a great start to your week, and we'll talk to you soon. Peace out.